it may be better if we frame them in a way that, again, instead of setting them up for other people to abide by, we're setting them up in a way that is helping us to be the person that we actually want to be. What does that look like? What do we need to do? What does that person act like? How does that person talk? How does that person show up? What do we need to do to help ourselves be that person, our best selves, our best embodiment of our highest self? Welcome to the Energy Within podcast, helping you to embrace your weirdness, beat imposter syndrome, and take action on your soul's purpose. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki master teacher, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys, and this is episode 177. And before I dive into this episode, I just want to throw out there that if you, for any reason, did not ever listen to episode 51, so all the way back to episode 51, you should go do that, because I actually just went back myself and listened to it because I'm in a couple of coaching and accountability groups, and in one of them, everything that was talked about in that episode was really relevant, so I felt it was appropriate to recommend it to the people in that group. And then I just decided to start listening to it again because it's so good. And it has nothing to do with me or anything that I said, because it's an interview with celebrity TV chef Nick Stellino. If you don't know who he has had multiple shows on PBS, all cooking shows, for over 20 years. I'm not sure if they all still play his shows, but I think he has actually moved on where everything is completely on his website. But he actually mentions a little bit about that relationship anyway, and what that actually looked like for him versus maybe some of the other cooks and talent that you might see on those channels. But it was back when the podcast was called Rockstar Confidence. So it started with the idea of confidence before we added in the Reiki and the energy work. And he is truly a super confident person. And to me, it has never come across as cocky, fake confidence whatsoever. He comes across to me as a truly genuine person. And he also talks a lot about that too, like what you see on TV and what I was experiencing with doing the interview with him. Like that's him all the time. There's no persona on TV, that's just him. And he has a really incredible story of all these risks, like really big risks that he took, including quitting a really extremely high paying stockbroker job in the moment, no notice, and decided that he was just gonna go be a chef. And it wasn't that simple. He has a story of that first interview where he actually almost got hired right away, and it just didn't work out. And he's a great storyteller, so you're gonna be immersed the whole time. The interview goes a little bit over an hour, and it's really 98% him talking. I didn't get the chance to ask many questions because he also happened to just naturally answer a lot of the questions I was ready with as he just continued telling his story. So I just let him go. And I think that there's some really inspiring and important lessons in his story for all of us. And I realized as I was thinking about mentioning this that even getting him on the podcast relates really closely to just taking a risk, like he talks about in his whole life story. I had a brief question pop into my mind of like, well, how did I manage that? How did I manage to get a celebrity TV chef on my podcast? And it's because I took the risk of just asking. It can feel like a big risk because I thought about it. I'm like, how cool would that be? I went to his website. I found the contact form. I almost filled it out. And then I didn't. I'm like, eh. And then I'm overanalyzing and reading into what I see about his appearances. And then I'm wondering, oh no, is he going to charge to come and do the podcast? And so I'm like, maybe I shouldn't. But I just kept having this nudge. So actually later the same day, which is unusual for me. Usually if I decide not to do something, but I'm still thinking about it, some time will go by. At least a few days, a couple weeks, maybe a couple months before I actually go ahead and do something about it. Well, it was later that same day I decided to just fill out the form and just see what happened. And that same day, he responded back with a very simple, Carrie, let's do it. And I'm like, ah! And it was one of the most fun interviews I've ever done. I'm so glad I was able to have that opportunity. And I really think, like I said, that there's a lot of benefit for you, a lot of inspiration for you, and for me too, because I went back and listened to it again, in just seeing what's possible. In a way, if you've ever seen the movie Ratatouille, I don't remember all the characters' names, but there was the one chef that the mouse looked up to, whose motto was everyone can cook. And that's the approach that Nick Stellino has always had with how he approaches his cooking show. That even though they're seemingly complicated recipes, he tries to break them down and make them accessible and approachable so that anybody can cook anything, but that translates really well into the rest of his story and taking risks. And without making that linear connection himself, he still kind of makes that same case that anybody and everybody can do anything that you want to. And it's not just some cheesy pipe dream kind of thing from someone who just happened to get lucky and make it. You hear in his story all of the grit and hard work and consistency that was put in leading up to all of his success. And being open to opportunities too. There's a really funny story about a big opportunity that really helped him get going in the TV world that he actually thought was a prank at first. So if nothing else, tune in for the stories, but I'm sure you're going to be inspired too. So go back to episode 51 and set aside some time and make sure you listen to that one. So today, the Boundaries Intensive, the Supported Feminine, is coming up this weekend. There's still time to sign up. And just a reminder that if you sign up but you're not able to make it live, or you can't stay the whole time, that's perfectly okay, because you will get the recording, but only if you sign up ahead of time. Once it's done, it will be available again once I get it up and ready for download on the website, but it will be at a higher investment. So make sure you get in now. And what I want to talk about real briefly is just shifting our perspective on what boundaries are actually really meant to do. Even if we don't say it out loud or think of it consciously, I think often we have this idea that we're setting boundaries as a way to tell other people what they can and cannot do around us, to us, for us. And in some cases that might be true, but I think that overall, what boundaries really are, and probably the best boundaries, are self-boundaries. The boundaries you set should be a reflection of you, what you need, what you're willing to accept from yourself, and less of a focus on making sure others are doing what you need them to do. Because in the end, we can't control other people. We can't make other people change their behavior or what they're saying. It's great if we can, but I don't think that we should always go in expecting that to happen, because it's just not always going to be the case. Not everybody is receptive. And while that sucks to hear, it's just reality. And I'm much more of an optimist, and I think optimists are the true realists versus pessimists. But that said, I think there's actually a little bit of a balance between optimism and realism. Realism shouldn't get into pessimism. It's just acknowledging what is, but then staying positive. So, for example, if I can't change someone's mind, I can't change their behavior, what you can do is decide what your behavior, what your reaction is going to be, and ideally for the highest good, ideally in a way that keeps you in integrity with yourself and on your path, because at the end of the day, you can only control who you are and what you do. And without going into a long, drawn-out explanation, if you've heard me say this before, I really, truly believe that, again, while it's probably frustrating to hear depending on where you are in your journey, the truth of the matter is the best way to create change is to just plant seeds, be your best self, live your life, be kind, and trust that you shining your lights, and I don't care how cheesy that sounds, will just naturally show others what's possible and inspire them to be themselves. Because you being yourself, being your most authentic self, being comfortable with who you are, truly comfortable, not just saying you are, not just thinking that you are, but really truly embodying that. It's different, trust me. That will create an atmosphere where others are so comfortable around you. They don't feel like they're being judged. They don't feel like they have to walk on eggshells. They don't feel like they're going to do something wrong. They are free and comfortable to be themselves. It will help them start to make their way towards that same embodiment. I hope that makes sense. It's just being yourself, being an example without intentionally being an example. Just allowing who you are to speak for itself, and then maybe planting some seeds. But maybe I should do an episode on that. I don't know if I should go into that, but I feel like there is a right way and a wrong way, or at least I should say maybe a better way to plant seeds that's more effective, that still really falls into the category of just being who you are and just living your life and allowing your light to shine and being kind. All of that wrapped in together. So really, when you set boundaries, it should, I think, I'm starting to think this more. So I don't want to say should, but I'm just starting to think this more, that it may be better if we frame them in a way that, again, instead of setting them up for other people to abide by, we're setting them up in a way that is helping us to be the person that we actually want to be. What does that look like? What do we need to do? What does that person act like? How does that person talk? How does that person show up? What do we need to do to help ourselves be that person, our best selves, our best embodiment of our highest self? Because guess what? You actually are your higher self right now. You just happen to be in human form, trying to remember it all. I do personally envision it as though my higher self is somehow out there guiding me, and I feel like that is true at the same time, that we are maybe on multiple timelines at the same time, which then also means that we can both be our higher self outside of us and still be that embodiment in human form at the same time. It's just that the human version is on a journey to remembering, to putting all the pieces back together. That's why it's called remembering, putting everything back together. So I think that's why the exercises that we're going to do prior to the energy work that we're going to do in the Supported Feminine, the Boundaries Intensive, it's also important because we're going to figure out what these best boundaries are for you. So I'm not going to set your boundaries for you, but we're going to discuss it. I'm going to share some examples, personal stories, invite others to share personal stories if they have any, and we'll write out what those boundaries should be. And then, yes, we are going to come up with a plan of what you're going to do if someone does push on those boundaries. but it's still going to make you ideally go back to, who do I want to be in this moment when someone's pushing on this boundary? How am I going to show up? How am I going to make sure that I am still the person that I want to be while this boundary is being pushed on? And then, because that is such a large task for all of us to do, setting boundaries is difficult, enforcing them is even harder, and turning it back on ourselves is going to be, I think, even harder. So we support that with the Reiki energy work. We'll do some card pulls that will help you individually figure out maybe what a boundary should be, or what you should do, what you should be expecting, and send you out afterwards, ideally feeling comfortable with a plan, ready to go, which should help you start to then move the needle forward in pursuing your purpose, in taking action on the big scary things that you want to do that require you to be this embodiment of who you want to be. I hope that makes sense. And I hope that inspires you to come and join us for the Supported Feminine. I would love to have you there, being a part of this work and moving yourself forward on this journey. It does, I think, require 3D work. Everything does not, and probably should not, all be in the 5D or higher. Because we can't ignore the fact that we're human. We're human for a reason. It's not bad that we're human. I read somewhere that other souls who have not chosen to incarnate as humans look at us with so much respect and admiration, because this is one of the hardest journeys to be on. But it's the best way for our soul to learn the lessons that it needs to grow and evolve. So I hope that inspires you. I hope that was helpful. Do go back and listen to episode 51, and make sure that you look for the link in the show notes, carriejokala.com/boundaries, to sign up for the Supported Feminine to help you start moving the needle forward. If you have any questions, please let me know. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am Carrie Jokala is my handle. And make sure you're also a part of the Energy Within Facebook group. You'll find the link for both of those in the show notes. I hope to see you on Saturday. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.